What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Yesterday we got another long anticipated trailer for The Last of Us 2, and it seems like every time Naughty Dog comes up, I keep thinking about this same issue. I want to talk about Neil Druckmann, aka the writer of the Uncharted series as well as the writer for The Last of Us. And also discuss something I've been thinking about for a long time. See, there is this narrative that is being pushed very often, and it is happening at Comic-Cons, it happens on Twitter, could be happening in this video with you watching me now. It is not exclusive to just comic books or just movies, just video games. Seems to me it is just society at large this is being applied to.
Okay, Trevor, will you just come out with it and tell us what you're talking about?
Well, what's happening is, say I make a certain type of comment or pose a question. That comment or question will be interpreted a certain way and then used to dismiss my concern entirely by labeling me a misogynist or a sexist. They will also try to shame me into submission, effectively deplatforming me on the subject. All the while, they falsely come off as the victim of some sort of planned, targeted, sexist attack. So let me give you an example of the type of comment or question that is handled in this manner. When I say,
I hope The Last of Us 2 storyline will be as good as the first, considering Naughty Dog is starting to take men out of their games as the playable character and replace them with women.
what do you think to yourself? You may end up asking,
Well, what do you mean by that?
some people may know exactly what I'm talking about, others may not care, but some of you think what you heard me say was,
Oh my god. Why do these game devs insist on putting women in games when all women are good for is making me a fucking sandwich?
Now I can tell you that if I had said the latter, without meaning it as some sort of stupid joke, of course context matters, but aside from it being some form of a joke, I would be the sexist and should be called out as such. However, what you may be unaware of is that Neil Druckmann, aka the writer of the Uncharted and Last of Us series, has admitted to being a fan of Anita Sarkeesian. He has even gone as far as stating that Uncharted 4 was heavily inspired by Anita's feminist frequency videos. If you do not know who Anita Sarkeesian is, aside from me being jealous of you, there are plenty of videos calling her out for the lying, hypocritical fraud that she is. Just search her name. Now, as far as your interpretation of what I just said, let's delve into that response and see if it holds up to some scrutiny, shall we? What is the problem that my comment is hoping to address? Is it my concern that the character is a female? Or is my concern more about wanting the story to be good and not feel forced? Do you have enough info to call me a sexist? Take for example Marvel Comics right now. Whenever someone says that Marvel stories suck right now, as soon as someone says anything about the fact that Iron Man or Thor is a woman, or a comic book store owner complains at a Comic-Con that kids come into the shop looking for the characters from the Marvel movies, only to discover that Captain America and Magneto are Nazis, Iron Man is a woman, Thor is a woman, so the kids just leave without buying comics. In that example, all they hear is, women don't belong in comics, and they are branded as sexist. But if you take the time to listen to them, what you find is that what they are saying is if the writer had actually taken the time to flesh out a good story of why Thor or Iron Man is a woman, or even if they rebooted and have them be women, whatever you have to do to make a good story. The concern is not women, it's not that politics are in the book that the person just doesn't agree with. It's that the stories are bad, the characters aren't fleshed out well enough, bad dialogue. These are valid concerns. It is not some vast conspiracy to be sexist against a comic book writer, much less women or people of color. Let's look at Uncharted: The Lost Legacy. Now, I would argue at the end of Uncharted 4, it was a setup for Sam as the main character and Sully as the non-playable character. Now, of course, Neil Druckmann has addressed this point in an interview, saying,
To be fair, when we explored the Sam and Sullivan story, it grew big and grew big quickly. But it just wasn't as compelling. At Naughty Dog, the best story wins, and at the time, we were exploring a number of different storylines, and Chloe's was the one that we settled on. To come out with something that felt fresh and had a new tone in the Uncharted world, which was just so much more compelling at the time. Neil Druckmann.
Now, I would submit to you that what Neil is saying is Chloe and Nadine as the main characters is what felt fresh, compelling, and had a new tone. But I would also argue that what set this precedent for what Neil Druckmann deemed compelling, fresh, or decidedly had a new tone is Neil's newly adopted political ideology he got from Anita. So to accuse Naughty Dog of having a political agenda because they replaced Sam and Sully is in my mind a fair conclusion to reach. Also, let's compare Sam in Uncharted 4 to Sam in Lost Legacy. Sam in Uncharted 4 was portrayed as someone who was obviously out for himself, yes, but incredibly capable. He is even more capable than Nathan numerous times in the game. Now let's contrast that with Sam in Lost Legacy. Sam is the butt of constant jokes for being a man. The girls take offense to anything he says. Let's also note that his lines are being written like this purposefully and out of character from Uncharted 4. Nadine and Chloe act as if Sam is just in the way. The game essentially makes out Sam to be this bumbling buffoon who is just in the way, while we are also led to believe that Sam is thinking he is more capable of doing the job than the weak women are. Let me ask you, do you remember when Elena busted Nathan in the hotel room and she was tearing him a new asshole? And Sam interrupted Elena to tell Nathan,
"You need to get your bitch under control."
Then Nathan told Sam to watch his mouth and back off, simultaneously setting off Elena to get in Sam's space so that Nathan had to get between them so they wouldn't fight. No, that never happened. The Lost Legacy is, in my opinion, a mild example of this ideology slightly implemented into a story, and it suffers for it. Also, why would they want to pick Nadine, the most disliked character of Uncharted 4, as the non-playable character for Lost Legacy? As a whole, the Lost Legacy wasn't terrible, but I think the shoehorn politics did not help. I also think that as Neil's passion for this ideology grows, the amount of politics getting shoehorned in these games will too. Now, my contention is not that politics don't belong in stories, but rather your politics shouldn't hold the story back in any way. The X-Men comics were done in a way to talk about racism, but they did it through greatly written stories. That's all some of us are asking and hoping. Please take the time to make good decisions and stories, no matter who you choose to be in the game. Now, I'd also like to ask a question, and I'm going to cite myself and SolidRev as the examples. Some of you may know SolidRev, others may not. Do yourself a favor and check him out, link in the description. In all honesty, odds are you are more familiar with him than me, but moving on. One of the big things game devs talk about is the word immersion.
Immerse yourself in our world.
With the way that we are developing games now today, technology is spreading in such a way that gamers are immersing themselves like never before.
Going with the theme of immersion, does it make someone sexist, racist, homophobic, if they find it too hard to immerse themselves with a character they cannot relate to? Now, full disclosure, I liked Horizon Zero Dawn. Suck it, Rev, it's a good fucking game. I also like the new Tomb Raider series. I loved playing as Ellie in The Last of Us. So I haven't really had a problem relating or playing as a female character. But SolidRev does have issues at times playing as women. Does this make SolidRev sexist? If I remember correctly, he loved at least one of the two new Tomb Raider games, so I'd say no. I've played a Native American called Connor in Assassin's Creed 3, and he is my favorite assassin in the franchise. I love the first Watch Dogs, despite the graphics hype shit that happened with Ubisoft. Despite the fact that Aiden was a lifeless, expressionless character. I love the theatrically driven storyline and the missions. I played it 8 times and counting. But Watch Dogs 2, I couldn't relate to the main character. Nor could I feel relatable to the hipster douchebag team he had in DedSec. Does that make me a racist? I don't think it does. But that doesn't stop people from saying it. And understand that by me and Rev saying we don't like these games, that it is not me and Rev telling the game devs not to ever use people of color or women. It is simply saying, hey, I couldn't get into that game. But hey, if you enjoyed this game, that's fine. Not every game will be catered to me or Rev or anyone else's personal traits. Most reasonable people know this. I think before we can all talk about these issues together, without fighting, without deplatforming, and make real progress, we all have to be less inclined to take offense to something and more inclined to listen to what is actually being said, rather than waiting for key words to be uttered so you can call someone out for meeting some preconceived description of someone you deem the enemy.
We are not the sexists you were looking for.
Well, that is my thoughts on the matter. What do you think? I'd really like to know. That's gonna do it for me. This is Trevor over at Toploaded Gaming saying, don't eat cheese before noon.